We've got a very powerful segment coming up here right now. Jon Rappoport from NoMoreFakeNews.com joins us, but let me give a quick introduction of what we are talking about. We've got GlaxoSmithKline pleading guilty to criminal fraud and now paying a $3 billion fine. Yeah, with a B, $3 billion fine to settle the criminal and civil charges. We've got two whistleblowers from Merck, two virologists, who went public with a False Claims Act claiming that Merck had spiked the results of falsified test data to fabricate a vaccine efficacy rate of 95% in order to keep selling it to the United States government. We've got evidence coming out, a lawsuit also filed against Merck that says that they engaged in a decade-long scheme to falsify and misrepresent the true efficacy of its vaccine, that it tried to conceal the evidence, that it threatened its virologists with going to jail if they spoke out and went to the FDA. The allegations here are just absolutely huge. And then we've got Pfizer being sued by retailers over its anti-competitive scheme. They say that the company has conspired to keep generic versions of cholesterol drugs off the market so that Pfizer can keep selling its nearly $10 billion a year worth of Lipitor without any competition. So all of this is going to be now discussed by none other than Jon Rappoport, one of my favorite guests. He knows his stuff. He joins us now by Skype video. Jon, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. Great to be here. Yeah, let's get into the chemical warfare section of the show.
Let's get right into it, man. But let's start with the fact that, number one, you and I and Alex and others who've been talking about this, we are completely vindicated at this point because we've talked about the criminality of Big Pharma, and now here it is. It's a matter of public record now, $3 billion fine for criminal activities that the company has pleaded guilty to.
Yes, it is vindication. And for all those people who have been saying that, you know, we're just a bunch of kooks and we don't know what we're talking about or we don't have the facts and we're just anti-something or other, I don't even know what it is, they're wrong and we're right, and that's the way it is. They have been lying. Media have been supporting these drug companies on and on and on and on and on. They don't see the continuing conspiracy of criminal activity on the part of Big Pharma. They don't want to see it, but it's been there for a long time. I've been in touch with mainstream reporters for years, trying to convince them to cover this one aspect or another, and they just shut it out because they know that they won't be able to. They're not allowed to.
Well, they know where their salaries come from. Where media gets its money is largely from the pharmaceutical companies. But look at this, Jon. Even when the False Claims Act came out, that the two whistleblowers from Merck went to the government and said, the government is being defrauded of hundreds of millions of dollars with a false vaccine, a mumps vaccine that doesn't even work at the claimed rate. The government said, we don't want to investigate. They just said, forget it. Let the company keep doing business that way. I mean, the government doesn't even care. We are talking about a deep, deep collusion between government, media, and pharma. What are your thoughts, Jon?
Well, that's what it is, Mike. It's been going on for decades and decades and decades. And they're so far in bed together that they can't get out or separate themselves from each other. Occasionally a scandal erupts, or three of them that we're looking at here, and so they pay a fine. But nobody goes to jail. Nobody's really punished. And let me indicate, as far as GlaxoSmithKline is concerned, you know, they have to pay $3 billion now for criminal actions related to three of their drugs, Paxil, Wellbutrin, and Avandia, hiding the dangers of Avandia and inducing doctors to prescribe Paxil and Wellbutrin for what's called off-label uses. In other words, uses where it could be even more dangerous than where it was before, say for children.
Yeah.
Well, during the period about which this fine covers, the $3 billion, those three drugs made GlaxoSmithKline $27.9 billion.
So $3 billion is just a slap on the wrist. Huh?
You know, and they had already set aside the money to pay the government.
Right.
They knew this could come down. And so they sat in their corporate boardroom and they said, okay, well, how much could this cost us? I mean, I don't know, $2 billion, $3 billion. All right, let's set it aside so we can pay because, you know, we're making $25, $27 billion off the three drugs. What do we care? This is the thinking. And the government goes along with this because the government knows that the $3 billion doesn't even begin to make a dent in Glaxo.
Well, it's like Alex uses this story of a guy robbing a bank and walks away right out of the bank with $1 million in cash, and the police show up. And, we caught you robbing the bank. Now pay us $10,000 and you can go free. So the robber takes out 10 grand, hands it to the police, and walks away with $990,000. Man, that's a pretty good day, and that's what Big Pharma does every day.
That's right. That's what they do every day. The government goes along with it. And as you and I have discussed before, you know, the public starts to look at this and they say, wait a minute, is somebody going to be put on trial? Is somebody actually from these companies going to go to jail? Go to jail for 10 years, 15, 20 years? Because this is endangering the public. I mean, these are dangerous drugs and vaccines that we're talking about here. And when these companies lie about the safety of them and the government just looks the other way, somebody's guilty here of a serious crime, but yet no one is ever prosecuted for a criminal offense.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
Justice does nothing.
Let me go over some of what GlaxoSmithKline pled guilty to here. Bribing doctors. Bribery, outright bribery of doctors, gave them luxury vacations and lucrative paid speaking gigs, even concert tickets to Madonna concerts apparently was part of was in the documents. It turns out also, this came out, the celebrity doctor, Dr. Drew, had received $275,000 from Glaxo to help promote their antidepressant drugs, apparently. That's being reported. I think that was in the Wall Street Journal. Glaxo fabricated drug safety data, lied to the FDA, defrauded Medicare and Medicaid out of billions of dollars, deceived regulators about the effectiveness of its drugs. It relied on these deceptive practices to earn billions of dollars while selling potentially dangerous drugs to unsuspecting consumers and medical patients. This is just some of what Glaxo is guilty of. And the Wall Street Journal reports, oh yeah, that's about Dr. Drew. $275,000 was billed to Glaxo for, quote, services for Wellbutrin. Services. And then he went on to promote that drug in speaking engagements and I believe on his radio show. Yeah, exactly. But apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal, he did not disclose that to his listening audience. So a lot of people getting caught up in this right now, taking money from a company that has now pleaded guilty to criminal behavior.
That's right. That's quite a list of charges that Glaxo has been found guilty of. And when we say fabricating drug safety, what that means is the company is saying, we've done studies on these drugs. They're safe, like Avandia, you know, which was an extremely dangerous drug. Oh, it's safe, no problem. And here are the studies that back it up. So what does that mean? That means that they were lying in the studies. They cooked the data. They fabricated results. They buried results that would be negative to the so-called safety of the drug.
Right.
They cheated in every possible way. And these studies were published in major medical journals so that doctors could read them and say, well, now we know that these drugs are good and safe, and so we can prescribe them.
But none of those studies are going to be retracted, though, John, because the fraud has to be allowed to sort of be catapulted into the consciousness of the medical community, right? So, and as you mentioned, nobody's being arrested. Nobody is going to jail over this. Now think about this, John. If you or I went out and sold a product to the government for millions or billions of dollars, and we bribed doctors, and we defrauded the government, and we lied, and we contrived the study results, and we did all that. You think they wouldn't arrest us? Of course they would. We'd be in prison like that. But these drug companies get away with felony crimes, and nobody's held accountable for it. Nobody.
Exactly. I have a statement here from Dr. Marcia Angel, who was the editor for 20 years of the New England Journal of Medicine, which is the most prestigious journal in the world. And when she left, she eventually wrote an article for the New York Review of Books that said, "It is simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published, or to rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authorities." I mean, you know, this is one of the premier people in the world of medical journals, and she's basically saying the system has collapsed.
It's broken. The whole thing's a fraud. If you're taking prescription drugs, if you're taking vaccines, you've been exploited. You've been fooled. All right, we got to go to break, John, but we'll come back with a lot more on this, including statements from GlaxoSmithKline about how they're now going to be monitored by the government to be more compliant. Yeah, right. Stay with us on The Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back with more. We are exposing Big Pharma's criminality right here on The Alex Jones Show with Jon Rappoport, our guest, and my name's Mike Adams, the fill-in host today for Alex. And John, I got to relate a story to you about how this goes on. Now, I'm looking at a BBC article, and it talks about GlaxoSmithKline has been found guilty of paying kickbacks to doctors, and the quote from U.S. Attorney Carmen Ortiz says, "The sales force of Glaxo bribed physicians to prescribe Glaxo products," those are their drugs, "using every imaginable form of high-price entertainment, from Hawaii vacations and paying doctors millions of dollars to go on speaking tours to tickets to Madonna concerts." Now, the last time I took a vacation to Hawaii, which must have been 8 years ago, I don't think I've even been on vacation in years, but the last time I was in Hawaii, I was staying at a hotel where there happened to be a continuing medical education course. They're called CMEs. You know about these, John. Many of our listeners may. But every doctor is required to have a certain number of hours of CME, continuing medical education, to keep their state medical license. So the CMEs are sponsored by drug companies. And in this case, I don't remember the drug company name, but the drug company would pay to fly the doctor and their entire family out to a luxury resort in Hawaii. I wasn't even staying at this resort. It was that high end. I was just walking through there and using their pool, actually. That's a funny story. But in any case, I saw this hall of all these doctors walking in, signing their names, and leaving. And I asked one, I said, what are you doing? What is this? They said, oh, you know, I'm a physician, and we're here for continuing medical education. And I said, well, I saw you just sign your name and you're leaving. What's the deal? What's going on? And he says, we don't really have to attend. We just have to sign that we did attend, and then we're pretty much free to go tour Hawaii all day with our families. That's continuing medical education, and it's paid for by the drug companies. It's just one of the forms of bribery that takes place in America. The whole thing is a fraud. John, have you seen anything like that go on firsthand like I did?
Well, what I've seen, I've been told about this by doctors and also ex-salespeople for drug companies. They're called detail men or detail people. And they go into doctor's offices. I'm from such and such drug company, and here's a bunch of free samples of our drugs, and I want to talk to the doctor, and they set up an appointment, and now the drug rep sits down with the doctor and says, look, here's this new drug that we've got, X3. Now, we know that the FDA has only approved it for use in adults. It's not approved for use in children, but of course, you as a doctor legally can prescribe this drug for anybody you want to. And I just want to tell you, off the record, doc, that this drug has been having amazing results with children. So you should feel free to be able to, prescribe this for children. And by the way, and now, the inducements, here's a few tickets to a concert. We're having a conference in the Bahamas next year, and I'm sure that we could do something for you, either as an attendee or maybe even a speaker. And this goes on every day in doctors' offices.
Oh, yeah.
So it isn't just the payoffs, but what the payoffs are for.
Oh, yeah.
To endanger the lives of children by conning doctors who are supposed to be resistant and intelligent and took the Hippocratic Oath.
It's all about getting doctors to prescribe more of the drugs, obviously, and the drug companies actually buy the data of how many of this prescription that doctor prescribed. They have all the spreadsheet, and they know which money to pay out to which doctor. And you know who is also a culprit in this, John, from nomorefakenews.com, by the way, if people want to check out your website, who's also a culprit in this, the doctors themselves. They have said for years, oh, we're not being bribed. No, that's consulting money. That was continuing medical education, even though they didn't even attend the classes. They said, oh, no, that was a speaking fee. Yeah, a $2 million speaking fee. Come on, it's a bribe. They don't care if you speak to anybody. They're just giving you money so you keep prescribing the drug. You doctor for accepting bribes.
Well, that's exactly it, because that is another crime, accepting a bribe. So these guys should go to jail.
They should.
And this tells you something about their medical training. We're led to believe that this is the most pristine form possible education in the world. Somewhere along the line, these people are learning to be criminals. The people that are in the doctor's office.
Criminals in training, yeah.
The criminals in training is what they're learning, because they understand the game. You've got to be prescribing the drugs. You've got to be playing the system, within the system. Otherwise, you're out. And, of course, Mike, on the other side of this, look at all what we've exposed here in just the last, half hour or so with these three giant drug companies.
Oh, there's more coming up. We're going to break here, John. Sorry to interrupt you. There's more coming up on Merck and what the whistleblowers say was falsified vaccine data coming right up.
Now, there are hundreds of great products at InfoWarsTeam.com, but I want to point out the three that have helped me lose 37 pounds in just 2 months. Products like Beyond Tangy Tangerine, Pollen Burst, and Rebound. When I started taking the Tangy Tangerine and other products every day, I lost more than 37 pounds in just 2 months. Now that's results. I want to challenge my listeners to go to InfoWarsTeam.com and to order just 3 of their products, and you will see the changes in the way you look, feel, and in your appetite almost immediately. Start your journey to health and wellness today. InfoWarsTeam.com.
Well, Alex is off today. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, filling in for Alex, and I'm joined now, continuing with Jon Rappoport from nomorefakenews.com. We are discussing the amazing revelations of total runaway criminality in the pharmaceutical industry, with GlaxoSmithKline now pleading guilty to $3 billion, pleading guilty to felony crimes resulting in $3 billion worth of fines. And now we're going to talk about Merck, but first, I got to say, I love the sense of humor here at InfoWars. There's a sign in the studio, I just got to share with you, a sign that says, at least twice weekly, we must do whistleblower interviews for 1 hour. Not complying will result in tasing. Does that apply to me too, guys? Just a technical question. All right, the taser will be brought out later, apparently. Okay, continuing on. If anybody should be tased right now, it's the drug reps and it's the doctors who took bribes from GlaxoSmithKline. How come these people aren't being arrested? Why are they allowed to break the law, to accept bribes, to put our children on drugs, to falsify data, to lie to the FDA? And the government says, we don't even care. We want you to just keep doing it. Why is this allowed to go on? Why the runaway total pharmaceutical corporate fascist government criminality in America today, John? What is happening? How do we stop this?
Well, certainly we stop it by exposing it, because we still have the freedom to not take these drugs.
Yeah,
they know
until Obamacare is mandated on everyone, by the way.
Well, that's another question we can get into. I mean, because these companies are going to do quite well under Obamacare. But, you know, as long as we fight for the freedom to either take a drug or not take a drug, that's the bottom line. Because, and the drug companies understand this, believe me. That's why they're going after the natural health industry so heavily. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if, the government has found a company called Ubla D that is selling vitamin C to the public, but it's actually vitamin E. Wow, and it's contaminated, and they're lying about it to health food stores, saying this, that, and the other thing, and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah,
they would have everybody in that nutritional company in jail for 20 years.
Absolutely.
But when Glaxo does it, you pay a $3 billion fine from your war chest of $27 billion, and just go on with business as usual.
No, it's even worse than that, John. When the FTC goes after natural supplement companies, they conduct the raids, they haul the people into court, and they confiscate the customer list, they confiscate the computers, they confiscate the inventory, but they make these companies refund everyone who ever bought that nutritional product in the history of the company. So why doesn't the Department of Justice go to GlaxoSmithKline and say, oh, you got to refund everybody who ever bought your drugs that you deceived us on? Why don't they do that?
Yeah, why don't they? Well, you know, we get into the deeper part of this, Mike, because drugs debilitate people. The overall effect of pharmaceutical drugs is to tranquilize, sedate, dumb down, debilitate, and kill at least 100,000 Americans a year. By statistics, we got the report, Starfield report. What does this do for the powers that be? It completely weakens the people of the United States of America and allows whatever agenda of power and control to be imposed on these people because they can't fight back. I mean, this is, to me, the bottom line. We're not just talking about advertising money. We're not just talking about profits. We're not just talking about, who colludes with who here. But why, as you say, why do these people continue to go free? Why does one attorney general after another pay no attention to this? Because this is a bigger agenda than the U.S. government or even the pharmaceutical companies. This is an agenda of destroying and rotting out the country from the inside, one individual at a time. It's chemical warfare. These are the drugs. And when the country is submitted to that kind of chemical warfare, they can't fight back.
Well, I think you're nailing it. You've really hit the point here that there is an intention to zombify the nation, to dumb down the cognitive function, to disconnect the neurology of the bodies of the people who are going to be the voters and the consumers and the taxpayers. I mean, you're right. You're right. Why is this criminality allowed to go on? Because it fits the agenda of keeping the entire sheeple population herded into a dumbed-down mentality while the global controllers take over the money, take over the economy, take over the food supply, take over the genetic capital of the planet through seed patents and animal patents and all these other things. You nailed it. You're exactly right. It's allowed because it fits the agenda. That's it.
And here's another thing, which I've discovered, 30 years of being a reporter. Connections to various mainstream reporters, politicians, connections meaning I find out things about them. So many of these people are on these drugs themselves, right? Yeah. They're on the tranquilizers. They're on the antidepressants. They're on all of these things. So now for them to turn around and even begin to question what the agenda really is that we're discussing here is impossible because these people are brainwashed into believing that they can't even function without the drugs in their system.
Oh, no,
so they're slaves. They're captives to Big Pharma themselves.
No, if we lived in a rational society, we should say that no one can be elected to a position of Congress or even the executive branch. They cannot serve in the public interest if they're on psychiatric drugs, for one thing, because those things mess with your head. They are, by definition, mind-altering drugs, psychotropics, antidepressants, everything prescribed by psychiatry. And yet, how many members of Congress are probably on those drugs and statin drugs that sap your energy and that cause early dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, we are being led by a bunch of drug-harmed legislative and judicial and executive leaders in our country who are not in their right presence of mind, literally.
Absolutely. You know, every time they get up to cast a vote or give a talk on the floor, they should say, "My name is John Smith. I'm the representative from Ohio, and full disclosure, here are the drugs I'm on."
Yeah.
Paxil,
Yeah.
and then they put me on Prozac, and they took me on Paxil, and then they said I wasn't really suffering from clinical depression, it was actually bipolar, so now I'm on, Depakote, which, could, of course, kill me tomorrow, but I'm serious. By the time they get done, everybody in the country is going to know we're being run by a bunch of completely deranged lunatics.
Well, here's a direct example. This was raised about Supreme Court Justice Roberts, and he being on, was it an anti-seizure medication, I believe?
That's right. Yeah.
And there were questions raised. I think it's legitimate to raise the question: did that affect his judgment? Did he flip-flop because of that? But not just him, and not just that issue, but all of the Supreme Court justices. I remember one of them was on chemotherapy at one point.
Which is like saying, oh, yeah, we're attacking this justice with chemical warfare that we used in World War I.
Yes.
So, don't expect him to say anything that makes any sense.
I mean, even in the military, isn't there a procedure by which if a commander has lost his presence of mind and is no longer, quote, fit for command, that his subordinates can say, we're relieving you of duty, you're not fit for command? That should be invoked across, all of Washington, D.C. for all the people that are on these drugs that are altering their judgment, altering their memories and their behavior. I mean, we are a nation of druggies.
Absolutely, and Washington, D.C. is the medical drug capital of the world, especially the psychiatric drugs.
Yes.
On and on and on. So they've been infiltrated. If we look at this for what it really is, Mike, it's like chemical warfare. Okay, Washington, D.C. has been infiltrated. All of these people that work in Congress and various federal agencies and so on have been infiltrated by destructive chemicals that are in their systems every single day, every hour of every day. This is warfare. This is a tactic of warfare. And when you finally see it for what it is, then you begin to make sense out of what's happening to this country. Because as we started this with, in any sane country, all of these drug executives and more would be in jail for 20, 30, 50 years by
Absolutely.
now.
Hey, in China, they would be sentenced to death.
Yeah, exactly.
They would just take them out and shoot them in China. That's what they did to the manufacturer that put the melamine in the infant formula. They just executed them. I'm not saying I'm in favor of the death penalty because it's so corrupt, but I'm just saying that China doesn't mess around on those issues. China's obviously very corrupt in its own way, but to your point, you're correct. Why is nothing happening to these people? Check out this statement. This was in the BBC. GlaxoSmithKline said in a statement that it would pay the fines, the $3 billion fines, through, quote, existing cash resources. They have $3 billion just lying around.
Yeah, in the closet. Open the door over there and get out the $3 billion.
Yeah, and it's just a fraction. Oh, and here's the other thing. From this is Mr. Whitty, but I'm not making this up. Andrew Whitty, the chief executive of Glaxo, said, quote, "We have learned from the mistakes that were made." Yeah, you got caught. And, quote, "When necessary, we have removed employees who have engaged in misconduct." So wait a minute. You defraud the government of hundreds of billions of dollars and somebody just loses a job over it? That's it?
Right.
But the company can keep doing business?
We've learned that when we get caught, we have to pay a fine. So we're going to be more devious now than we were before.
Yes.
I think that's what the statement means. That's what he's saying, basically.
That's what he's saying. But we got to move on to Merck. This is an even bigger, more outrageous issue in many ways. And I know you've already looked into this as well. Check this out. Merck virologist Stephen Crowling and Joan Wolchowski, trying to get that name right, they claimed in a 2010 False Claims Act document, which we posted. I did a big write-up of this on naturalnews.com. That's on screen right now. And today's article's on Infowars.com as well. According to these virologists, Merck, quote, falsified test data to fabricate a vaccine efficacy rate of 95%. Turns out to be completely false, according to them. They spiked the blood test with animal antibodies in order to artificially inflate the appearance of immune system antibodies. Merck pressured the two virologists to, quote, participate in the fraud and the subsequent cover-up, that they used the falsified trial results to swindle the U.S. government out of hundreds of millions of dollars for a vaccine that does not provide adequate immunization, that they intimidated the scientists, threatened them with having to go to jail unless they stayed silent. And in doing all of this, Merck actually contributed to the spread of the outbreaks of mumps, which is, of course, the very thing that the CDC cites to push everybody to go get more vaccines. So you talk about a grand fraud, total runaway criminal scam. This is what's being described by these former employees. It is incredible. And everybody who went out there and got injected with the mumps vaccine, if this is all true, you got suckered. You got suckered big time. And once again, we were right, John. We were right. Don't get vaccinated. Right. It's a scam.
Completely. And not only were you cheated if you got the vaccine, but you can't sue the government.
Oh, no. They all have complete immunity.
Yeah, the drug companies, government immunity, right?
Yep.
All they can do is just sit there and say, well, we got cheated. Now, people have to understand that when they say that they used animal antibodies, just to give you a gross version of this, it would be like you make a solution in a laboratory in a dish and you say, okay, now we're trying to prove that the vaccine is really effective here, and so we want to see some real action in this liquid, but we don't see any. So obviously we failed. It's no good. So bring that big bowl over there of animal blood.
Yeah.
And just pour it in here, and let's see if we can get some foam going. Oh, yeah, that's great. Okay, now we can prove that the vaccine is effective. That's basically what they did.
It is outright fabricated fraud. It's almost as if you faked your birth certificate and tried to pass it off as real.
Nobody would ever do that.
Nobody would do that in America. No. But check this out. According to these virologists, Merck's mumps viral strain is 45 years old. Here's the explanation from the complaint. For more than 30 years, Merck has had an exclusive license from the FDA to manufacture and sell the mumps vaccine in the U.S. The FDA first approved it in 1967. It was developed by Dr. Maurice Hilleman. You remember Hilleman? InfoWars has played the recordings of him and his crew laughing about all the cancer stealth viruses in the vaccines. At Merck's West Point research facility from the mumps virus that infected his 5-year-old daughter, Geraldine. Merck continues to use this, quote, Geraldine strain of the virus for its vaccine today. That means this mumps viral strain is 45 years old and it's been weakened through multiple generations of what's called passaging to have it prepped for processing into a vaccine. This is a total fraud. If this turns out to be absolutely true, it is a complete scientific fraud at every level. It's unbelievable.
They say all the time, oh, the viruses are mutating, they're changing. We have to completely revamp vaccines every year in order to keep up with this. But, hold on, in the case of the mumps vaccine, we're quite sure that it's been the same virus without mutations for 45 years, and so we can use my daughter's virus and make the same vaccine over and over again. It's a lot less expensive. Who cares if it doesn't work or if it kills you? That's just the breaks. You can't sue us, so just shut up and take your vaccine.
Yeah, that's it. You got to get down to this. Think about all the doctors and all the so-called skeptics and science people who said, no, these vaccines are all perfectly safe and perfectly effective. It's the best science in the world. It's the gold standard of scientists. We wouldn't lie. We have PhDs. Oh, my God. Now they're all fools. They look like complete fools. I mean, the whole thing was fabricated, according to these two virologists. They'd
even go so far as to say that people like you and me are terrorists, right?
Yeah. I mean, we must be info terrorists.
We're trying to get people not to take vaccines. And, of course, in doing that, we'll be destroying the entire country. So
yes.
They have the science. I mean, it's rock solid. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, the whole mumps vaccine is a total fraud from the top down? Wait a minute. I think I have to take a vacation.
A medical farce is what I say. Yeah. So all of you people out there listening today on this Monday, If you have been vaccinated with MMR or a mumps vaccine made by Merck in the last, 45 years, you need to take a second look at who swindled you into that deal and what may have actually happened to you. Instead of being immune from the mumps, remember, we talked about this. The Institute of Medicine put out a report that said one of the biggest side effects of the mumps vaccine is the mumps.
Correct.
So it's like,
correct. Otherwise,
it's comedy.
It's perfectly effective. I mean, aside from getting the mumps vaccine is a miracle. And
and you could have
it's
just
so
taken...
ridiculous when you start to pick this whole thing apart.
Oh man!
Right?
Oh man!
It's just, and then on top of this, what happened to Merck was, even when they took the big bowl of animal blood, so to speak, and poured it into the dish, the results were still not very good for them.
Right, they had to fake the results a second time.
No, we can't even, that fraud didn't work. So let's just conceal all of the findings that we've got up until now.
All right, we got to take a break.
We'll lie about
We'll be right back, John.
Let's falsify the test
Stay with
data.
us, folks. We'll be right back with more. Stay with us. Oh, man.
Sick of the globalist eugenicist control freaks adding poison to your water and laughing as you get sick and die? Start purifying your water with ProPure. My friends, I've done a lot of research, and the best gravity filter out there, bar none, is ProPure, and it's available discounted at Infowars.com. Its filters are silver impregnated to prevent bacterial growth. There's no priming required. It's NSF 42 certified. Optional fluoride filters can reduce fluoride up to 95%. Easy to set up and use. Doesn't require electricity. Purify water from lakes, streams, ponds, and wells. This filter system leaves in beneficial minerals, which is key. Save money by not buying bottled water and avoid BPA that leaches from the plastic. ProPure is the best gravity-fed filter out there. It's what my family uses. Infowars.com already has the lowest price on ProPure, but if you add the promo code WATER at checkout, you get an additional 10% off at Infowars.com. You can also call to order 888-253-3139.
Wow, this has become comedy hour, and the comedy is in the fraud of the vaccine and all the people who fell for it, all the doctors, all the pharmacists, all the CDC officials. Hey, John, I got a Jeopardy quiz question for you. Where is the former president, the former head of the CDC who was running the CDC during all of this alleged fraud that went on with the fake vaccine? Where is she now? Let our audience know.
Couldn't be with a drug company, could it?
Of course not. That would be too funny.
That would never happen.
That would never happen to Dr. Julie Gerberding, who is now running one of the top vaccine companies' international divisions. But this is the thing. This is the thing. I guess if the lie is told by enough authorities and enough doctors with people with medical degrees, as my friend Robert Scott Bell likes to say, I guess the lie becomes reality. And then if the lab tests don't match the lie, they just spike it with some animal blood. They just throw in, they change the numbers, roll the dice, do whatever they want, invent something, send it over to the FDA, and sell it to 200 million American children. or all over the world. And it's probably not 200 million children, but 200 million Americans overall got these vaccines. So that's a big number. That's a lot of people who got hoodwinked.
Absolutely. That's what they do. They establish, okay, this is reality. Everybody's on board. Everybody knows we can't, rock the boat here because we've gone too far. So now if anything comes up that really contradicts what we've been saying here and claiming, we've got to lie about it. Everybody understand that? Everybody understands. Yes. Okay, let's move forward now. And that's what they do. And what they're taught and what they learn is how to sound like they know what they're talking about. Yeah. I mean, this is media, this is doctors, this is all of these people. Their main skill as far as dealing with people is, I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I mean, I see people on television all the time talking about medical stuff. I mean, analysts and commentators like Bill Maher and so forth, as if they have the slightest idea what they're talking about. They have no clue. I mean, where are they getting their information from? You don't find them in medical libraries reading through studies and calling up researchers on the phone. They're just taking their clue from all of the other lying idiots and criminals who have access to and control the media, basically. And so we're pointing out here the lies and how deep they go. And they go all the way to the bottom. This rabbit hole has no bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, can you stay with us a little bit into the next hour, because there's still so much more to cover here. This is huge breaking news. This is, okay, now think about the application. Once we understand the depth of the fraud, and by the way, the mainstream media is practically refusing to cover this. You're only going to get this on places like InfoWars, Natural News, Drudge Report, places like that. But if this has been faked for the last at least 10 years, then now you got to look at all the mandatory vaccination policies that have been put into place, like in Texas, where before you go to a university, you have to be injected with the fake mumps vaccine. You know, in California, the mandatory vaccines, don't these state governments now have to take a new look and say, wait a minute, how can we mandate something that's total fraud?
I bet they won't. I bet they'll just, oh, well, that was an interesting article. Okay, so let's get out the vaccines and, keep on. That's what they do, and then if you argue with them, they'll say, you could be a terrorist.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, it's the end of sanity in America. It's the end of truth. It's the end of justice. The country's being run by total zombie, runaway, criminal-minded, insane, psychotic, sociopathic bureaucrats and doctors and drug company executives. It's crazy. We'll be right back with Jon Rappoport and much more straight ahead, continuing here on The Alex Jones Show. Hey, this is Mike Adams filling in for Alex with our guest, Jon Rappoport from NoMoreFakeNews.com. Now, John, because this segment is not carried by all the radio affiliates, I want to depart for just a moment and get onto this. I've got a trace mineral block in my hand here in the InfoWars studios. It's about the size of a brick. Here, hold it up for you here for the camera. You can see on the prisonplanet.tv. This is a mineral lick for animals, and the ingredients include zinc oxide, ferrous carbonate, iron, obviously, manganese, iodine, cobalt, and salt, and some other minerals. John, can you explain to our listeners, why is it that in America we use trace minerals to keep our cattle alive, but anybody who tries to prescribe trace minerals to humans is considered a quack? What's going on with that?
I guess the animals are more important than the humans. And secondly, the drug companies have a complete stranglehold, or trying to, on the market. So imagine what would happen if people began to take enough trace minerals in the right way so that their health suddenly blossomed.
Yeah.
Now, the people from doctor's office call up and say, well, you're scheduled for your check and we told you to come and so forth. Well, actually, I don't have to come because I have to tell you, I'm feeling so healthy, it's ridiculous. What do you mean you're feeling so healthy? You mean you're not sick? No, I haven't been sick in a long time now that I'm taking my minerals. What minerals? I mean, this is now, a distinct threat to the multi-trillion-dollar establishment. You can't have healthy people running around in the country.
No, you don't need minerals, John. You need a mumps vaccine.
That's right. You need a mumps
what your body
vaccine
needs.
That doesn't work. Yeah, that's what you really need, Maybe they'll start putting minerals in the mumps vaccine, That'll be the way of combating the sales of natural minerals. It's just stark. It's that stark, Mike. It's the same idea, If you're marketing a product that actually works and it's not a drug, I mean, this is one of the reasons why they went after Stan Brzezinski so hard in Texas, MD, treating cancer patients with extraordinary results for decades now, has been subjected to how many grand juries? At least 7. They've been trying to shut him down, in every possible way. Well, one of the problems is that Dr. Brzezinski developed his own medicine. This is like the cardinal sin. No drug company is producing it. He produces it himself. Well, now you're really talking about, this is like holding a gun to the drug company's heads. We have to get rid of this guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, check this out. So InfoWars, a lot of people drink tangy tangerine. So there's a bottle here on Alex's desk. I just grabbed it. Look at the minerals in this. This is the equivalent of the mineral supplement to the cattle that you want to keep alive. If you want to keep your people alive, you got to have minerals. So this has iron, magnesium, zinc, selenium, copper, chromium, and potassium, and plus probably some other trace minerals as well. But so, this is the kind of thing, if you want to stay alive, or if you want to keep your animals alive, you got to have trace minerals in your biology. But yet, if you go buy the sugar, if you go buy the wheat that's processed, the bleached white flour, all the minerals are stripped away. So humans are being fed this diet that is devoid of minerals. That's if it's even in the soil to begin with, which usually it's not anymore because the soils have been essentially mined for the minerals long ago. So, we have a nation of mineral deficient and vitamin D deficient people, and they say the answer is more drugs, and the drugs turn out to be total fraud. Wow.
Yeah, and the drugs strip other minerals out of your body. But, eating all the deficient foods is great business for the pharmaceutical companies because they say, well, this is terrific, no more topsoil, and they stripped all the minerals out of the food. Fabulous, because now watch them get
stay with
sick.
us, John. We got to go to break, so I interrupt. We'll finish up with Merck on the other side, and then we have a guest coming up, U.S. Army medic, straight ahead. Welcome back to the third hour of the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, editor of naturalnews.com, filling in for Alex today. Thank you for continuing with us. We're continuing. We held over Jon Rappoport for just a few minutes to wrap up this section. Blockbuster news about the total fraud and criminality of the pharmaceutical and vaccine industry. This is all becoming public knowledge now on the record. And then we're going to be joined in a few minutes by a U.S. Army medic he went through a very difficult court-martial because of his refusal to be injected with experimental vaccines by the military. He'll be joining us by Skype with comments on that in just a few minutes. But catching up and then wrapping this up, John, GlaxoSmithKline, again, pleads guilty to bribery, fraud, and other crimes, $3 billion fine. 2 Merck virologists come out and say the company spiked its blood samples, falsified its test results, and defrauded the government of hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, and they say, by the way, quote, the ultimate victims here are the millions of children who every year are being injected with a mumps vaccine that is not providing them with an adequate level of protection. The failure in Merck's vaccine has allowed this disease to linger, with significant outbreaks continuing to occur. So there we go. Merck's own former employees saying that Merck is causing the spread of infectious disease that their vaccines claim to actually prevent. But on top of that, John, here's where I want your comments. And thank you for staying with us. I really appreciate it. The Chatham Primary Care has filed a lawsuit against Merck now, claiming that they were defrauded by Merck because of a, quote, decade-long scheme to falsify and misrepresent the true efficacy of its vaccine. Says that Merck knows and has taken affirmative steps to conceal that this mumps vaccine is far less than 95% effective and that this has been going on since at least 1999. Wow, this is a long-standing, ongoing situation. So are you familiar with the details of that lawsuit, John, or do you have any comments on it?
Well, the comment that I have is I'm happy to hear this because since the Department of Justice will do absolutely nothing to prosecute the people at Merck responsible for this, then if you can pile on with more lawsuits, that's a good thing. If you can get different groups who were actually defrauded, just like this one was, to take them to court and say, well, we were defrauded too, so pay us out as well. Because what this is saying basically, Mike, is if a drug company defrauds intentionally 100 million people, those 100 million people deserve something in return.
Yes, at least a refund. If not,
at least a refund.
If not
yeah,
more punitive
yeah,
damages.
quite a bit more because they were injected with something. It wasn't like you bought a toaster and it didn't toast the bread. You know,
it did probably toast their brain a little bit, though.
Right. So, yeah, you would deserve
stealth
a little
viruses.
bit more.
Well, yeah, but see, this is the big picture here, is that there's immunity granted to the drug companies over vaccines. So you can't have a class action lawsuit now. So the government has created a situation where there is no justice for the fraud that's now emerging from the vaccine industry. There is no justice.
Well, that's what they did. That's how they covered themselves. The vaccine companies went to the government 10 years ago, a little bit more, and said, well, guys, basically, we're going to get out of the vaccine business because there's too many lawsuits and we can't make any money. And so there were meetings. They sat down in a room and they started to hammer out this whole kind of agreement. And the government said, well, you know, I mean, we got to keep making vaccines. I mean, come on. And the drug companies were kind of laughing up their sleeve. And they said, well, look, if you grant us immunity from lawsuits and you create some kind of hokey little government payout system with a lot of red tape, then we can make a deal. And the government said, yeah, sure, why not? We can do that. And that's what happened. And that's why you've got this very limited window of opportunity to make these drug companies pay for what they do.
Well, something has got to happen. Last drug company to be mentioned here today is Pfizer, now being sued by retailers over what is deemed an anti-competitive scheme. Many of the largest pharmacies in the U.S. are now suing Pfizer, and this is reported on by Reuters and other sources. The lawsuit claims that Pfizer obtained a fraudulent patent, engaged in sham litigation, entered a price-fixing agreement to delay the arrival of cheaper generic drugs, and entered arrangements with pharmacy benefit managers to force retailers to buy more Lipitor, their cholesterol drug. So now we have, look about all the parties that are potentially harmed in all this. Now we have the pharmacies claiming that they're the victims of anti-competitive, monopolistic price-fixing behavior by Pfizer. This is getting deep.
Oh, yeah. This is getting very deep because, you know, if you're selling basically a fraudulent, dangerous product to begin with, it stands to reason that you're the type of criminal mind who will do whatever you can to maximize your profits, right? And so price fixing, we don't want those generic drugs on the market. We want pharmacies to keep selling Lipitor, whatever. They're going to do that. They're going to just keep pushing the envelope wherever they can. And now suppose they get fined. I don't know how much they're going to have to pay out, a few $100 million. Where does that rank against the sales of Lipitor?
Exactly.
It's just like, you know, a little minnow in the ocean.
Yeah, right. All right, last thing, John, then I'll let you go. Again, I appreciate your time. I'm going to ask you 8 or 9 rapid-fire questions. I want a yes or no from you, and whether you think, yes or no only.
Whether is it a pass or fail?
This is, yeah. No, you already passed. We just want your comments. Would Big Pharma engage in the following behaviors? Yes or no, Jon Rappoport. Number 1, would they falsify efficacy data on other prescription drugs?
Yes.
Would they exploit children for deadly vaccine trials?
Absolutely, yes.
How about this? Would they invent fictitious diseases to sell more drugs?
Yes, with exclamation point.
All right, only yes or no, no exclamation marks. No.
Sorry.
Would they? Okay, here's this might stump you. Would they unleash bioweapons to cause a pandemic that would make them money?
Yes.
Okay. Would they conspire with the CDC to spread fear about a pandemic to promote more vaccination sales?
Yes.
That's a no-brainer. Would they silence whistleblowers who try to go to the public with the truth?
Yes.
Wow, okay. Would they give people cancer via stealth viruses and vaccines to sell more high-profit cancer treatments?
Yes.
Would they destroy the careers of medical scientists who question Big Pharma and the vaccine mythology?
Yes.
This is all yeses. Okay, fine. Last question. Would they force a medical monopoly on the entire U.S. population via socialist healthcare legislation?
Gee, let me think about that. Yes.
All right. A+, Jon Rappoport.
Oh,
hey,
boy,
you got
okay.
A+ for you, man.
Send me my diploma.
I'm going to say you got a PhD for that one right there. Thank you for joining us, John. It's always great to have you on.
Thanks so much, Mike. It's been great.
All right, Jon Rappoport, everybody, from nomorefakenews.com if you'd like to learn more from John. And, John, thanks for playing along with my impromptu pop quiz right there. And yes, you pass with flying colors.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the sites, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.